Well, I know some of these stories about the steaks are surprising to you because they were surprising to me, frankly. And it was just a shock for these things to happen. So after these stories started getting out, people would start calling, saying, "Steve, how much are your steaks?" And I would say, "I don't sell steaks. Go make your own steaks." And then the questions started pouring in. It was just hilarious. Uh, how many verses did you use? What verses did you use? What kind of steaks are they? What are they made out of? How deep are they? How far apart are they? Plastic okay? Is metal okay? Which verses did you use? Are they sticking up so the lawnmower can hit them? What if your property is not square? Do they go halfway in the ground or all the way in the ground? What if one comes up? And I was just laughing about all these questions. On Thursday mornings, I have a prayer group. We share a bunch of guys share prayer requests and so forth. And I was just laughing about these questions, telling them to my buddies. And one day they looked at me and said, "Steve, this is from God. You need to sell steaks." Well, I didn't want to do that because that sounds like commercializing God to me. I just didn't like that idea. And they said, "You know what? If you're doing something for the kingdom, people are always going to criticize you. Don't worry about that. If it's from God, then you can't stop it. And if it's not from God, you can't make it successful." Kind of like the advice in the Sanhedrin from, I think it was Gamaliel. And anyway, they talked me into selling steaks. And one of the guys had a special machine that made thermal labels that last 10 years in the weather. And he said, "You pick the verses and I'll make the labels for you." So I started putting these 16 verses on the steaks. And people started calling me with story after story after story. I started selling way more steaks than books. In fact, I was buying bigger and bigger quantities of steaks. And finally, one day, the plastics company called me and said, or actually, it was the camping company, and they said, "Sir, we've just canceled your last order for 700 more steaks. We can't keep up with how many steaks you need. You're going to have to buy them somewhere else." I said, "Okay." A couple of days later, I got a phone call from a man in Jacksonville, Texas, and he says, "Is this Steve Hemphill?" "Yes." "Are you the guy putting Bible verses on tent stakes?" "Yes, I am." He said, "We want to make them for you. We've been in business since 1968. We're a family-owned plastics manufacturer, and we can design a mold so the verses are engraved in the mold. They'll be built into the plastic. So when the steaks pop out of the mold, they'll be just like the ones you have now, but the verses will be already in the plastic. They'll be permanent. No more need for stickers or writing on them." And I said, "Wow, that would be really cool. How would this work?" And he said, "Well, of course, you got to buy the mold, and then we make the steaks for you." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, I'm in ministry now, and I don't have a salary for being in ministry. How much is a mold?" And he said, $10,000. And I said, "Well, thanks for calling, but I can't afford to do that." He said, Wait, don't hang up. I want to know, what are you doing with all these steaks?" So I started telling him story after story after story. I get more calls almost every day. And after a few stories, he stopped me and he said, "Never mind. I'll pay for the mold." I said, "You don't even know me." He said, "Yes, but I know God. And this is a God thing, and I want to be part of it. I want to help you." So now the steaks have the verses built into the plastic. And they're even on Amazon. They're called Spiritual Warfare Steaks. And I'm just telling you, you can't make this stuff up. But God is still powerful. His word is still powerful. And that's the only explanation I can give you. I hope that encourages you today.